Hi, I'm Tim Xavier.
Hi, my name is Mike Grimser.
And you're at Man-Made Mastering with Point Blank. The studio originated from Brooklyn, New York, where I bought my record cutting lathe, which is a Scully Westrix system. I moved to Berlin in 2007. You know, Berlin really allows artists to live a bit cheaper and to be able to enjoy life. So yeah, the machine was shipped over. I met Mike. He came highly recommended from multiple artists. Nowadays we specialize in pure analog mastering, digital finalizing, we do restoration, and naturally we do master cuts on our record lathe for vinyl manufacturing. Here I'm just going to show you an A and B of one of my own productions, so you can hear before mastering and after mastering. And then after that, I'd like to just cut a little test cut onto the dub plate here with our cutting lathe. Here I have a new tune coming out on a label called Sleaze UK. On the bottom here is just a general mix down with some light maximization so I can get nominal volume next to the mastered file. Sounds normal, it's great. Maybe the highs are a bit dull, there's not a whole lot of warmth in the low end. And I think the master, it's just like night and day. All right, so here is our main mastering DAW. We use Sequoia 11 by Magix. And this is the file loaded and ready to be cut. So right now I'm cutting around +5 dB peak, which isn't too loud. Usually we can push the level to around +7, +8. First thing I want to do is I'm going to turn on the suction. What's happening here is as the grooves are cut out of the plate, it creates what we call the chip, and the chip is sucked up in through this tube into a vacuum jar behind the lathe. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start the helium, and the helium is basically piped into each coil form where the coils vibrate that transcend the energy. Coils get red hot, helium cools the head. It's like oil in a car, it keeps the engine cool. Third thing I'm going to do is turn on the stylus heat. The stylus heat allows us to cut like a hot knife going through a cold stick of butter. So in the end, we don't get a whole lot of surface to noise in the blank groove and essentially in the actual recording. I'll switch the head on to RIAA. And the first thing I'm going to do before I actually start cutting is make sure the groove depth is right. And everything looks good. Just adjusting the groove so there is a slice of space in between. All right, so vacuum's engaged, helium's engaged, stylus heat is engaged, RIAA is engaged, and we are ready to cut. So I'm going to press play here. And now if I mute the preview, you can actually hear the cutter head working. Mostly what you hear are the high frequencies. And now we have a nice, let's say 20 seconds or so, cut onto this dub plate. Let's check it out.
First to say, I got into mastering through love to music, I would say. In the beginning, I started collecting records at the age of 12 or so. Then I got into electronic music. I wanted to know how this kind of music is produced, so I started producing like at the beginning of the 90s, something like that. Then I wanted to get deeper. I wanted to gain some deeper knowledge about audio and also about mastering, about cutting. So I started to go to audio school and studied a couple of basics. And I ran into Tim. I think it was the time when he still ran the studio from Brooklyn. So I got in touch with him and we met at the studio, at the space.
You insisted on sitting in on the session.
Yeah, and insisted on sitting in a session because I always liked to do that also on like projects I did in the 90s. I always liked to go to the mastering studio to kind of get to know the black art or this black box of mastering, because for a lot of people it's just like you don't really know what's going on. It's kind of a mysterious thing. And over time I just absorbed a couple of things, I learned a couple of things, I read a lot of books and I studied, and it's not that big of a magic as you think at the beginning. Over-limiting, over-compression. And the second thing is due to a lot of music gets written and produced in small environments. It's not like people go to big studios with like mixing engineers and all that hi-fi stuff. So people produce at home or in small studios. So they are used to listen on near-field speakers. And near-field speakers, they don't give you the full frequency response you need. So the problem is most of the time that people can't hear their bass in their rooms or on their speakers, because it's near field speakers, they don't go that low, they don't have the full frequency spectrum. So most of the people, they add bass with a mastering engineer in the end ending up rolling off bass because there's just too much. Take your time for a mixdown and to listen in different environments which you know. Take the music, go in your car, listen there, go to your home stereo, listen there. Maybe play it out if you're a DJ in the club, listen there, and then find a balance so the tune sounds equally good on all these different sound systems and all these different environments you listen. And if you find the way that it sounds best in all these different, because every listening environment, every pair of speakers, every room gives you a different view to a mix of a tune.
I know a lot of producers who will actually have a pair of headphones connected to their console. You know, so if you don't get the low end from the near field monitors, you can always pop on the headphones and go, oh, okay, it's bassy, you know.
But don't mix on headphones, because the stereo listening works entirely different in headphones than it works with speakers.
But I had this attitude that, you know, well, I'm producing these tracks and they sound great to me here. I didn't take Mike's advice. I didn't listen to them on all these different platforms or listening environments. And I kind of had the attitude of like, well, I don't really understand mastering. And my tunes at the time were, most of them getting mastered at the Exchange in London, so I was kind of like, well, I'll just leave it up to them. They'll make it sound punchy, or they'll make it sound warmer. And I think that's kind of like the wrong attitude to have. Loudness is a tricky thing. You know, for me, it's all about how the track is mixed and how it sounds acoustically before limiting or maximization or compression. And, you know, I tell clients that they say, oh, make it louder, make it louder, make it louder. And I try to explain to them, the more I bring that threshold down, you know, yes, the waveform is being smashed into this space, but the track actually gets quieter and it loses punch, it loses dynamics. It's like putting too much sugar in your coffee. It's like, it's sweet. You know, it's not going to get any sweeter.
To say it rude, loudness is an overrated thing because everyone has a gain knob or on the amplifier or the mixing desk or whatever. Sure, I understand that different kinds of music, like especially dance music, also hip-hop, it's compressed music. Yeah, it's got to be compressed to have that kind of sound, but only to a certain point when, especially with limiting just cuts off peaks. And cutting off peaks is distortion. And depending to what grade you sacrifice the dynamic, you introduce more distortion. And it's not only pleasing distortion to your ear, at some point it's just too much, and every track has its threshold of loudness. You can't get every track equally loud. One track or better produced tracks can be made louder with less artifacts than not that good produced tracks. Producing is not only mixing, it also starts already when you're writing your track. When you use like 5 different bass drums and 8 different subs, then there's no wonder that the track doesn't sound good, unless you're a really experienced mixing engineer. Yeah, so keeping things more simple is most of the times the better way. And for us, when it comes to vinyl, then the more intact the dynamics are and the less limiting distortion is introduced, the better the sound on vinyl, especially when it comes to the inside diameter of a record.
The vinyl market has picked up. I mean, so far, actually lately there's a lot of labels that actually do better sales when they choose to do vinyl-only releases. And there's been a surge of like vinyl-only releases. You walk into the store, I mean, especially if you play on Traktor or if you play digitally with like a flash key on a CDJ 2000 or something, you walk into a record store to buy vinyl, I mean, the first place I'm gonna go is vinyl-only, just to see what's not available digitally. Sales will not kill vinyl. What will kill vinyl are the very few engineers who are left in the world who are able to repair the cutter head that transcends the vibration, that cuts the grooves into the lacquer. And these cutter heads are delicate, and the engineers for repairing them are few and far between, and I don't know if many of them have apprentices, because if you repair the cutter head, you know, you're going to try to get as much business as you can before you get any older.
The reason why our ears, or the human ear, rates vinyl as a pleasing sounding medium is that due to physical limitations in the cutting process, it's much closer to the way we hear. Like with digital files, everything is possible. Regarding the stereo image, regarding loudness, regarding the energy in high frequencies, everything is possible, but not everything sounds nice to our ears.